Patti Vasquez.
From global conflicts to greenhouse gases, the folks refusing to wear masks says, and politicians getting caught grabbing asses says, she's driving it home with Patti Vasquez.
Hello, and happy Monday. Hope that you're happy, healthy, and safe wherever you are tonight. We're excited that you're joining us, and I hope that you also had, if you celebrate the Halloween festivities, that you had some wonderful trick-or-treaters. It was a little slow by us, and we had plenty of candy, so we're planning on donating a lot of that to folks who need it. I know that some of our neighborhood electeds collect it for sending overseas. Some folks in my neighborhood are asking for the candy so they can celebrate some birthday parties. So find ways, if you have extra candy, to send that off to folks. I have to, hold on a second, everybody. I got to plug this in. I don't know if you can hear me. There we go. I can hear things again. I'm sort of racing in here, and it's just been a long day and a long weekend, but we were thrilled to see so many of our neighbors out enjoying the Halloween festivities. 773-763-9278 is our number to call or text us. And of course, we love hearing your voices, so we would really prefer if you call, but it's okay if you text, because I get it. And we appreciate those contributions to the conversation always. Lady B and I have come in our Dia de los Muertos face, and today is Dia de los Muertos, which is a celebration of those we have lost, whether it's our ancestors. We pay homage to those who've come before us, and specifically many of us have tributes to those that we want to spend time with. The idea is that between November 1st and 2nd is the day when we reunite with our lost loved ones. And I have on the candy skull, sort of some of the painting of it, and a little heart, as I think I've mentioned, for me represents my dad, and I'm wearing a Cubs hat. Now, my dad wasn't necessarily a Cubs fan in the end, but as a youngster, he used to sneak out of school, and he would get a ride on a trolley. My father was born in 1933, so when he was about 7 or 8 years old, he would sneak onto the trolley and sneak into Wrigley Field to see his beloved Cubs. And one trip to the park, he actually encountered his priest. Father Coffee caught him playing a hooky and also sneaking onto the trolley. And my dad would also sneak into Wrigley because there was an opening in the fence that he would sneak through. And Father Coffee said, "Young man, you should be in school right now." And as part of his punishment, he actually paid for the trolley ride and then paid for my dad's ticket in to see the Cubs. My dad saw the Cubs with Father Coffee, and then the priest told him to never do that again. And I loved my dad's version of that story. And actually, I got to meet Father Coffee about 20 years ago. He was in a retirement home for priests, and that was one of my dad's favorite memories. Ultimately, he began hating the Cubs because one of them used foul language with him when he was 10, and my dad went home and asked his mom what those words meant, and she washed his mouth out with soap. And that was the last day my father was a Cubs fan for the rest of his life. He actually had a standing bet that the Cubs wouldn't finish a season over 500. And he won many of those seasons. So that's the Cubs hats to the little boy that my father once was. And joining me in studio is musician Chris Jones. Let me see how your mic is right there. How you doing, Chris?
Doing great.
Then I have the wrong mic on. Hold on a second. Okay. Let's try this one. There we go.
Hey, there we go. Hey, how you doing, Patty?
That's a little bit of my dad's background on his Cubs fandom. But for Dia de los Muertos, we use elements of our beloved lives, whether it's kind of the food that they loved. For my father, it would be baseball. He would spend hours in the bathroom reading the baseball encyclopedia. And you yourself, we've talked about our allegiances to the Cubs. This is the first time all year I've worn my Cubs hat because I stopped watching them.
They made it difficult.
Yes.
Well, let's put it that way. I was a Cubs convert because I moved here in 1981, and I was a musician, full-time working nights, and had the days free, so I would hop the L and go. I was living on the north side in Rogers Park, hop the L, go down there and get a $1.50 bleacher seat, and it was pretty irresistible.
Yes, isn't that crazy?
And I had been used to sad, hard luck teams because of a New York Mets background. I was sort of grew up a Mets and Giants fan, and so I was the early '80s Cubs were disastrous until 1984. I related totally, and the whole experience was wonderful, and it was easy to convert me.
$1.50. That
Yes.
is, the Ricketts will not let anybody. That can't get you anything. Not even a bottle of water outside the park.
Yeah, no.
No, yeah, you messaged me about what's a Cubs fan supposed to do, considering the changes. For me, it's been a bit like when the Ricketts bought the Cubs, and then you find out how much. I think one of the Ricketts is one of the top, organizes fundraising for Donald Trump, and then the kicker for me was when the Marquee Network, which is Sinclair, they were going to start broadcasting, and part of what made the Cubs so accessible, one, were the bleachers. Working class folks could go watch the Cubs for $1.50. You'd spend maybe $15 for the whole day of getting a drink and a hot dog. And yes, we're talking about 1980, the 1970s, but the idea that you would then have to pay to watch a game. This was what destroyed the Blackhawks long before the disaster of what has happened in the last decade. But the owners of the Blackhawks wouldn't broadcast because they said if you want to see a game, you got to buy a ticket. And it's essentially what Marquee has done with the Cubs.
It's backwards thinking because that goes all the way back to the start of radio broadcasting in baseball. And initially, the teams were against it. They said, you can't do that. You can't put it on a radio because then nobody will come to the games. And that's the way they thought.
Yeah.
And, of course, we know how wrong that was.
Yes, the fact that WGN and WGN America carried the Cubs all over the country, that's why we had fans in so many different parts of the country who didn't care about Chicago but fell in love with this team by watching them on WGN all the time.
Yeah, it was a huge transformation, and yeah, people from Iowa and everywhere else.
Yep. So that's, by the way, Chris Jones is in studio with us. We're going to play some of the music that he's sharing with us today, and he is on his way to Nashville, coming from Canada. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on up there. However, listeners are calling in. This is a listener-driven conversation, so whatever's on our listeners' mind, whatever's on your mind is where we go. So Jim is on first. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Hi, Patti. How are you? The Sacks made the mistake of going at 32 in the early 70s, and that's what. But anyway, today's the climate summit, and they have a lawyer who was up Friday on charges. He sued Exxon for $13 billion for killing indigenous people in the Amazon. And they garnered their forces and prosecuted this man, the first prosecution by a corporation in American history, and they had a judge go along with it. I'm just curious, do you know what his fate was? Friday he was under house arrest for almost 900 days, almost 3 years, and finally he was sentenced to 6 months, and the last I saw of him, he didn't know if he was going to Rikers or if they were going to a federal camp or what are they going to do?
No, I don't know what the final outcome was.
Yeah, I don't know what the outcome is either. And the interesting thing about it is nobody brought it up to Exxon or Chevron about this case in the Senate hearing that Friday. It just shows you how money drives.
Yep. These
people are so bought off by these companies that they're afraid to lift up their head.
Yeah,
in the meantime,
I agree.
In the meantime, there's thousands of people dying under different circumstances because of the climate. Anyway, if you could find out what happened to this gentleman, I really appreciate it because he successfully sued him for $13 billion, got the money. They've never paid a dime of it, but they actually got a judge to prosecute this gentleman. Anyway, Patti, have a good show. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. I'm going to take let's take Steve from the Gold Coast. Hey, Steve. Good to talk to you. What's up?
Hello.
Hello.
Well, yes, I wanted to sort of segue on your conversation with regard to the Cubs. And I, too, remember a time when, you could get out of school and go over to Wrigley Field and somebody would sell you a ticket for $2, $3, $4. And even if you control for inflation, going back to the 70s and 80s, we're still talking about $10, $15 at the most.
Yeah.
And today, where are you going to see a Cubs game for $15? I'm sorry, you can rank the various professional sports entities from the New York Yankees at the very top. Costs more to go see the New York Yankees, the total experience, than anything else. then the Cowboys, and the Cubs are right behind them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's what it's become. And let's face it, I mean, the Cubs are a victim of their own success. This past year, they were about 7th or 8th in Major League Baseball as far as attendance, despite their abysmal record. The Sox did very well. They were 18th because, you go to Wrigley Field to enjoy the game. If the Cubs win, it's a secondary.
Absolutely. Yep, I agree with that.
The whole point is simply to go to Wrigleyville and enjoy everything. And they exploit that to the umpteenth. And unfortunately, lifelong fans, old people who don't have much, I mean, they long ago were excluded from being able to go to the Cubs game. Then you took them off of what was broadcast TV. It wasn't just, it was cable TV if you were in Dallas or Los Angeles. But in Chicago, you could still get it simply broadcast. And you could watch it at home with your little, rabbit ears. But, now you don't even have that. And all because, Major League Sports, including the Ricketts, are bound and determined to squeeze every dime they can out of that franchise. And, the fans be damned. And I'm sorry that it's come to that because you really have to be well off to enjoy Cubs games today.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Everything about that. I mean, I had a friend who got me bleacher seats, and I was like, "Oh, what do I owe you?" It was like $90. It was the year after they won the World Series, but still, I was like, "What?"
When you calculate, when you calculate the totality of the game, people sometimes, this is what tickets are going to cost. Well, what's transportation going to cost you? Tickets? You planning to drink or eat anything at that game? And then afterwards, you plan to come straight home, and you're maybe going to stop somewhere. So by the way, the parking situation, God help you if you plan to drive to park. So all that considered, and then you're not going by yourself. So, if you go with your buddies, they're paying their own way. But if you're taking your family, you're paying the way. So what is it going to cost you? It can be a several $100 proposition to go see the Cubs with a couple of children. And, I mean, that's just life.
Yeah. Yeah, I really, it used to be a working class game. And I'm guessing most sports were until it became so commercialized. And, everyone, if someone was telling me about how sports are, when we go to Wizard World, it's pretty much the same thing. It's cosplay. You want to be around other people that have the same sort of interests that you do, and you get really whipped into this frenzy. And I get it. It also taps into those family traditions and sentimentality, remembering where you were when something happened. Like, I remember I was at Marie's Pizza on Lawrence when the Cubs won 5 years ago tomorrow. Thank you, Jerry, for the reminder.
Yeah, I would say that that unlike other sports, I mean, I give football its due. I mean, you could add 5 more teams to the NFL tomorrow, and they would still sell out. It'd be immensely profitable because that's the nature of the game. And many people say, basketball and baseball are what we do in between football seasons in this country, right. And really that is reflected in terms of the numbers. But baseball is a dying sport. I mean, young people just don't care about it, and this is not the way to get young people on board. To alienate, working class young people and poor people, because they can't experience the game. They're not going to wait until they're 30 to become Cubs fans when they have an upper middle class job.
Right.
I mean, I think it's just backward thinking, but that's just my view.
I know. It's short-term thinking. And actually, Chris and I were talking about this on a different topic earlier, is that people make these decisions or, have this sort of framework for a business thinking that in the short, it seems logical, but the long-term ramifications, as you said, pricing out a younger generation, you're isolating your profitability, even though you get a lot of bucks in the short term.
And then adding to that,
the guy who paid $2 to go see the Cubs when he was 15, well, you know what? When he's making $250,000 a year, he's the guy who's going to pay you $1,000 for a seat, to go to a playoff game. But if you can't get him when he's 15 because he's priced out, you're not going to get him at 35. So I just think it's a bad mistake on the part of the Cubs. But hey, again, my opinion.
Well, and as Patti was talking about, then suddenly making it so you no longer have access to it on television. So, yeah, you can't afford to go to the game, can't watch it.
Yeah. Oh. You're losing a whole fan base. Short-term thinking, long-term price that you'll have to pay. Thanks so much for calling, Steve. Have a great rest of your evening. Thank you. Let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. What's on your mind? 773-763-9278. That's 773-763-9278. More in a moment on Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. That's me. Talk to you in a second.
Life is already full of surprises, but your tuition shouldn't be one of them. While education costs rise in the U.S. every year, University of Phoenix is committed to protecting you from rising tuition costs with our tuition guarantee. We lock in your tuition so you can count on fixed, affordable tuition from the moment you enroll to the day you graduate from your program. Learn more at phoenix.edu.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, men of all races across the country volunteered to join the fight, despite the United States Army being heavily segregated. Black enlistees were mostly assigned to combat support roles. But this did not stop Lieutenant Colonel Paul L. Bates, who knew of the racism and pushed his soldiers to achieve excellence. The 761st Tank Battalion was formed in the spring of 1942. It contained 30 black officers, 6 white officers, and 676 enlisted men. The unit donned the nickname the Black Panthers, wearing patches on their uniforms with a panther on it and the slogan, "Come Out Fighting." And in 1944, the 761st was assigned to General George Patton's Third Army in France. General Patton gave a colorful speech to his crew, and the Black Panthers became the first African-American tank squad in World War II. And by the end of the war, the Black Panthers had fought further east than every other United States unit, receiving 391 decorations for their heroism.
When the forgotten poor are in need of healing, they wait for a ship unlike any other. Mercy Ships, a floating hospital staffed by volunteers, heroes of mercy who donate their time to save lives.
Every human has the right to have a place at the table of the human race.
If you could just see the smiles that you get when lives have been changed, then it would make it all worth it.
To learn more about Heroes of Mercy, go to mercyships.org.
Funny how it all fell into place. You could see the journey and the lines upon my face. No way to think that there's no master plan. When I look at where I started out and then at where I am, I'm a wanderer, I'm a pilgrim. I was made to move to the beat of my own drum, on my way to God's great kingdom. Grateful for the road ahead, grateful for the miles that I have come.
That's a request from a listener. Chris Jones joins me in studio, and that's from the 708. They requested "I'm a Wanderer" by our wonderful guest in studio. I know you gave me a list of songs to play, but a listener says, they also say your guest was close to Tom T. Hall. They want to know, hold on, let me make sure this is on. Is it true that Tom T. Hall once considered running for governor?
That is actually true, and I don't know that many details about it, but he was urged by some people in the Democratic Party in Tennessee to go ahead and do that. Apparently his response was, "I already have a job," and he wasn't interested in that. He was politically active here and there. In fact, one of his most famous songs was one called "Old Dogs, Children, and Watermelon Wine," which he wrote either after or right before going to the Democratic Convention in Miami in 1972. So he was down there for that with the Tennessee delegation at that time, and jotted this song down apparently on an air sickness bag on a plane after he'd had this conversation with a guy in a bar and said, the only things important in life are old dogs, children, and watermelon wine. And so he wrote the line down and then wrote the song on the plane on the way home.
So many great stories, I'm sure. I mean, I've been on the road for 27 years as a comic, and so we're a different breed. Musicians, but it's a wonderful world, and I know that you continue talking to a lot of musicians. Tell folks a little bit about the show that you have on SiriusXM.
Yeah, I do. I work for a couple of channels, but primarily for the Bluegrass channel, which is called Bluegrass Junction. So I do some regular mix of different bluegrass music, and then I do a classic bluegrass history kind of show. And then I do some filling in here and there. I was actually on this morning. And then do some, I'm sort of a frequent sub over at the Classic Country channel, which is called Willie's Roadhouse, which I also really enjoy.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is a we were talking a little bit before we came in here about working in companies and corporations, and one of the things for me about being a road comic was doing the job, and if anything went sideways, I was leaving on Sunday anyway. Yeah, that's kind of, and to be a wanderer is a little bit of the life. Have you ever written lyrics like on a sick bag? I mean, I'm sure that there are napkins and notebooks all over your home.
Lots of napkins,
yes.
And a lot of times things will come to me driving. It seems like a good time for ideas to percolate, and I'm usually scrambling around for something. So, a bag that had contained a hamburger and stuff like that. And I've always got a pen on me.
Yes.
And of course, the smartphone has revolutionized this because, we can just sort of record little snippets of things. And a lot of these turned into songs and ended up being recorded.
That's great. There's an app called Otter, Otter, that does an audio recording and transcribes it as you're recording it. And you can add different elements in there too. Evernote, you can do like clips of other things. I do both of those. Otter, we'll talk about it before you. Otter, and then you can have that text sent to your email, and then you can edit from there too, or put it wherever you need to. But I'm a big fan.
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm a big fan. So we've got some folks that are calling. Let's go with Brian from Joliet. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Did you have a nice Halloween?
I did have a lovely Halloween. How about yourself?
Oh, it was wonderful. Well, you were talking of sports, and I have to first say, when did the owners ever care about the feelings of the fans?
Oh, absolutely. I know.
And you had, the Cubs traded. I'm a Sox fan, but I see the Cubs traded away. Baez, Rizzo, and Bryant. And then I noticed, I was just checking in once. I see that after that they still have a full house. I don't know why. Why after that? What Ricketts did to the Cubs fans, and they still show up with full houses.
Yep.
And then I had a cousin about 5 years ago went to the Sox ballpark. He told me they were charging $20 for a cup of beer, and then the Sox owner Reinsdorf in the playoffs, he blocked out the second game of the playoffs for the Sox, so I had to listen to it on the radio, and I think he wanted $50 extra to watch the game, and I listened on the radio, and this guy's a billionaire, and I thought, man, I wouldn't give you a penny. In fact, I was thinking, like, if I could, no way of doing it, I'd block out the Sox channel from my television, and it wouldn't even give him a penny. And you got 50% of the American population working paycheck to paycheck with maybe $1,000 to spare. A lot of people can't even afford basic cable, and a whole lot of them are Sox fans, and Reinsdorf does that to them just to make a few more bucks. I mean, how much does a person need?
You're right. Oh, we could go on and on about that. I think about that almost all the time. My husband and I were laughing today because I found a VHS copy of Mulan in my basement, and they're like, if it's an unopened copy, this is true. Like a couple of years ago, those were going for $800,000, and copies of, I think it's like Bambi or something. Some of these were going for $1 million. My husband said, "You know what? This is why we're not taxing the rich enough, because they're paying $1 million for an unopened copy of Bambi." He goes, "I don't care if it's an audio recording of Jesus reading the Bible out loud. It should how are millionaires spending this much money on VHS tapes?"
Yeah. Need to tax the sale of things like that. Any movie about a deer that goes for over $500,000 is going to have to have some kind of a levy.
How much do you really want it? Yeah,
exactly.
It's so crazy.
Well, and now I hear that from what I heard, the 3.5 human infrastructure plan of Biden's now, but that's been cut in half,
and then slashed from there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Pardon?
And then slashed from there. They want to go to a trillion.
If I might finish, that you still got them whining. He wants to tax people who are making over $400,000 a year, and Biden mentioned earlier 55 corporations that don't pay a penny in income taxes. These deadbeats, when it comes to taxes, have been getting unfair tax cuts for 40 years, and they're still whining about it.
Yep.
And it's like, how much do you need to do what? I mean, how many mansions can you buy?
I agree.
Get my point?
I absolutely get your point. Yeah, I agree with you. Point well made, my friend.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call, Patty. Have a wonderful day.
You too. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great evening. We're going to take a break here, Chris, and come back. We've got a call from Dave on hold, and we'll continue our conversation. We're in studio with musician and host of Bluegrass Junction. I'll have to remember that. I should know. Bluegrass Junction host on Sirius XM, and musician Chris Jones. We're going to hear some more of his music when we come back. Google Chris Jones. What's the best way for them to find your website?
Chris Jones Grass. Add grass in there as in bluegrass. So chrisjonesgrass.com.
Excellent. More in a moment with Chris Jones and your calls on Driving It Home with me, your host, Patti Vasquez. Thank you for being here.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. Lower your energy bills and reduce your carbon footprint with the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
In on the Edens, bumper to bumper, 2E down to the Kennedy Merge. Lake Oak Road down to the junction 27, 15 on the flip. Now the Kennedy outbound is heavy on the West Lake from Montrose to Harlem. 14 to the split, 10 in the Express, 34 out to O'Hare. Back inbound from O'Hare at 42 minutes, 22 of that on in from the junction. Ike outbound stop and go from Damon to 25th Avenue. From the Circle out to 390 and 39. Inbound bumper to bumper from North to the Tri-State, Wolf to Ridgeland. 390 back in at 45. Now on the Stevenson outbound, stacked up on out to Pulaski. From DeSable Lakeshore Drive on out to 355 and 48. Inbound at Central, word of a crash. 355 back into the drive at 32. The Ryan out to 95th and 25, hitting the brakes at 43rd. That's traffic. I'm Mary DeBadges.
Right now at Wendy's, see why everyone is raving about their brand new fries. Natural cut, skin on with a hint of sea salt and guaranteed to be hot and crispy or they'll replace them. You know, the way fries should be. Try Wendy's guaranteed hot and crispy fries today at participating U.S. Wendy's.
If you have been financially affected by the COVID pandemic, then this message is for you. Are you among the many folks who have lost their jobs, or if you've been furloughed, or working from home at a reduced pay? If you have credit card debt and cannot make your monthly payments, we at Debt Fix Pros can help. Call us to see how we can reduce your interest rates and lower your monthly payments. If you are struggling with credit card debt, we can help. Call 800-707-1097. That's 800-707-1097.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We know you're not quick with opinions beyond your tight circle of friends, but that's why people listen whenever you choose to weigh in. You've been a clear voice of reason, careful when choosing your words. But now that it's down to what's right and what's wrong, it's time for that voice to be heard. There's always a risk in expressing that which you know to be true, but this is no season for silence. We need to hear from you.
Well, Chris Jones in the studio, songwriter, musician, and host of Bluegrass Junction. I'm guessing that how long ago is this song? Because that's remarkable and beautiful and appropriate.
Well, thanks a lot. This is on a brand new album that just came out a couple of weeks ago, and wrote the song pre-2020 election, but things were already, I think we could see what was going to happen when that election was over before the fact, because of the fact that Trump, for example, was going around and saying that this was there was going to be fraud, and all of that was going on, and part of the inspiration for that song was just that there were so many people not speaking up that people would respect and say, you need to say something.
And that was true when Hillary was running. I saw people just weren't posting. They didn't want to be up for. They didn't want to be vocal about their support for her or for the Democratic nomination for president.
Well, people are just afraid of being stomped on, legitimately in the social media realm. Of course, people are just attack people or attack people in person, and it does become very difficult.
Yeah, exhausting.
Right, exactly.
It turns out. Dave is giving us a call. What's on your mind, Dave? Hello.
Hey, Patty. Hey, Chris.
Hey.
Got a couple of quick hitters here.
Okay.
Kind of tying in the last call. What about that Tom Brady when he kept his money from the stimulus incentive? And him, people worrying that if he's got his 600 touchdowns or stuff like that. He could have donated that money. I mean, that's walking money for him. And second thing, I got thinking about this one on where kind of a thought where you got these cops and these anti-vaxxers that are refusing the shots, right, because of the fact that whatever is going to come. What have they ever thought about if they're going for the surgery that most of the blood now probably been donated by people that have had the shot, so they're going to have some of that antibodies in their body now?
It's hard to track all the different arguments because when you start the discussion about why they want to get vaxxed, it's always the goalposts always get moved. First, it's people will often say, "I'm not anti-vaxxer. I just don't want to be forced to do it," and then we even had a listener say that I don't have all the information, and then remember she switched to religious exemption. She went from saying that she wanted more data and then she said, well, what about religious exemption? And so it's always something else. People don't want to report it. And this isn't like all of them. Obviously, different people have different reasons. But often when you talk to the loudest people about it, the goalposts continue to move. And it becomes political because it seems as though they'd rather just own the libs than do what's right for public safety, for their own safety, for the safety of people in their homes, on their block, and in their communities.
And I just read, too, where the Marines are giving these ones that haven't had the shots pretty much the ultimatum by the end of the month, this month now. If they don't get it, they're out.
Yeah.
And,
well, right now we have 60 police officers who are not being paid and have been stripped. And I don't know if today's ruling, there was a judge that ruled that the mandate could be paused, that they apparently ruling against the city of Chicago for the vaccine mandate that they all have to be vaccinated by the end of the year. And so that's been ruled on today. I don't know how that's going to change statewide, so we'll see what happens next. But
and I'll close you with this one. Like when you're talking about the candy, had anybody kind of, if they can do it, I don't know, donate the candy to the children's hospital or your local hospital in the children's ward?
Well, there
ones that
I know that
couldn't get to go.
I know that there are often local, like your alder people might have, check out their pages and see if they're collecting any of your electeds. I know in my community, so remember I've talked about Buy Nothing, B-U-Y, nothing. You can find out if there's one for your neighborhood where people are often posting in search of, and there's at least 3 or 4 groups that are asking for candy to be sent to one woman says she's looking for candy to be sent to the Philippines. She's going to collect it and send it there for kids who their parents can't afford nice things for Christmas. So some folks are doing that. Some people send it overseas activities to those serving in the military. There's a lot of, and just little things, like one woman said she's having a birthday party. So you can probably search for those kinds of groups. Even just put it out there. If you have someplace to post, hey, I've got a ton of extra Halloween candy. Anyone need it? You could probably do it that way too.
Yeah, I just thought of the sick kids in the hospital that couldn't do it, and it is still supposed to be about for kids. So.
Exactly. I agree.
Hey, Patty, did you get that piece of mail?
Oh, I don't know if I have. I'll have to check and see.
Okay,
Not recently.
Let me get off, so you got some others I know. So be well.
Oh, take care. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Happy Dia de los Muertos. We didn't have that many trick-or-treaters. You were traveling, so you did not have to...
I was actually at a friend's house in northern Indiana, and I live in an area where either they don't like him, or no, I know that's not true. No, it was just a fairly remote area, and there weren't any trick-or-treaters last night, so we ate all the candy ourselves.
Nice. What's your favorite out of that collection that you...
I'm kind of a Reese's Peanut Butter Cups person. The sad thing is I've recently given up sugar, so I'm just kidding about eating it all. I would like to have, but it's sad.
There are a lot of different organizations that do trunk or treating now. So I think that the people who had lower turnout for trick or treating, I think that because it feels as though Halloween lasted the whole week before. I mean, this is the fourth time I put on a skull face. So it was a lot of different stuff going on, a lot of neighborhood events, which is nice. But at the same time, I felt bad for the parents who are clearly trying to go through that tradition of going door to door. Hardly any homes in our neighborhood were decorated on the blocks around our house. Like, we at least try to put an inflatable cat and, the orange lights and some witches in the window to let people know we were celebrating and they were welcome to our candy.
I don't know if anyone wants to really go out of their way, but I live now in a very small town in northern Alberta in western Canada. And on Halloween, this little town is like the candy promised land. I've never seen anything like it. Our daughter has gone out year after year and comes back with like a store full of candy. It's amazing. So if you want to really go the extra mile and make that thousands of extra miles, you can have a really good trick-or-treating run.
Vacation in Alberta for Halloween. I like that.
Exactly.
I did a run. I think I told you this last time. It's been a couple of years, though. I did a 2-week run in Canada that started in Regina, which is the way you say it. So we started in Regina. We did a lot of Saskatoon. We were in Medicine Hat. We were in Alberta during the Stampede, so that means that which is the rodeo, and it's a massive turnout for that. And we went all the way up to Flin Flon, which is crazy. I don't even know which province is that in.
Manitoba.
It's in Manitoba. So I was in Saskatoon, Manitoba, and Alberta. So I went through 3 at least. That's a lot in 2 weeks. It was a lot of driving.
Yeah, you're covering a lot of ground there.
Oh my God. We had gigs like almost when you've got a gig on Thursday, but you've got to be 8 hours or 10 hours away the next day. It's crazy what we do.
And I hope you weren't trying to get a hotel room in Calgary during the Stampede, because that can't be done.
The good news was that the booker had our hotels all booked all along the way. I just don't know why they did that. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. But the audiences, I will say this about Canada, they're very polite. They don't laugh very loudly, and then we'll come up to you afterwards and tell you how hysterical you were, even though the auditory reception of that did not reflect that sort of attitude.
That is tough. I found that performing music in the Netherlands, it was like that too, more subdued, and you just had to tell yourself, yeah, they're probably actually liking this. They're being very quiet, and sure enough, at the end, they're thrilled. But it is hard at the time, and especially, I'm sure, in comedy.
How do you absorb that energy? Because I've always thought for comics, you have to listen to every word we say in order for the material to land, right? And whenever I see a musical comedian, I'm always jealous because people will applaud whether or not they heard everything at the end of the song when they stop playing. And I've always been jealous of that. I will be honest.
Well, and I've always really admired what you do, because I always felt like, if things aren't going well musically, and I try to mix in a little humor, and if everything I'm saying is landing flat, then we just go to a song. We play a song, and that's okay.
Right.
And you don't have that option.
No. Do you? So what is a bad show? Like people yelling at me? Because how do you receive a bad show? As far as like the not applauding at the end of a song, or no one's paying attention, Or do you can just feel it?
Assaulting the banjo player is usually a sign that things aren't going well. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say, it sounds like a dangerous job then.
No.
I've only been in one fight in comedy, by the way, in 27 years. And I didn't throw any punches. I might have gotten a little loud, which led to punches. But go ahead.
No, if things are going badly, and so often not to shift blame, because sometimes this is our fault. A lot of times it is a sound issue where people are not hearing things properly, or they can't really focus in for whatever reason. There's some kind of distraction. But even if everything is going right, and they just don't like what you're doing, you can just they're kind of quiet. The response is subdued. You can feel it. And you can feel it by looking at people as well. And the occasional sleeping person in the front row is never a good sign. And so that happens. And then, of course, the worst thing is people start talking amongst themselves.
You get distracted by that, too. You just can't play. Do you get louder at all, or no?
Yeah, the tendency is to get louder.
And then they talk louder.
Yeah. So
gosh.
It's
you have to watch. Greg Giraldo filmed he was a good friend of mine. He passed away quite a time ago. But he recorded his special in New York, and a guy fell asleep. And Greg couldn't take it. Greg just had to go out. I mean, does a whole chunk of and pivots so beautifully. He was so nimble intellectually when it came to his material, and was able to still go back into his material. But I often laugh at comedians who lock into that one person that looks like they're not having a good time, or he didn't have to. No one in the world would have known if that guy was sleeping at Greg's show, but he couldn't take it, and it always cracks me up.
I try never to say anything, and I will say that the people that play bluegrass music have this happen more than in other forms of music because of the Bluegrass Festival, and festivals will typically, they're outdoors. They're oftentimes in the summer, and it's 98 degrees out, and an older crowd, and some people are sitting there all afternoon. And it gets to be about 3 in the afternoon, and a lot of bands will have an afternoon set and an evening set and the afternoon set. You're going to find a person that's just maybe had enough today and
just been lulled to sleep by the music around them.
And I just never say anything.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. We're hanging out with Chris Jones. You can go to chrisjonesgrass.com to find out more about his music and his tour dates, and we'll talk about that when we come back, and what it's like to be what's going on in Canada as far as what is in the news, and also, there's a lot of radical crazy going on up there, but at least they don't have a lot of guns. More after this on WCPT, Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. We'll talk to you in a second.
This is the sound of the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program, saving you money and energy while helping you lower your carbon footprint. With discounts on Energy Star certified LED bulbs, so you can come back to a home full of savings. Learn more at ComEd.com/lighting. ComEd, powering lives.
This is Joan Esposito, and here at WCPT, we love pets. So much that we're spotlighting an adoptable, adorable dog or cat every month. So many deserving pets are waiting for their forever home. We've partnered with community shelters and our sponsors, Love for Dogs Pet Grooming and Mark Drugs, to talk about why rescue is best. It's all on Joan Esposito Live, Local and Progressive. See our current adoptable at WCPT820.com.
Do your pets have the same energy they used to? Do they have problems with itching, scratching, a dull coat, or goopy ears? Then your pets need Dinovite.
DINOVITE.com.
For over 20 years, pet owners have trusted Dinovite to supplement their pet's diet.
We started Dinovite, and in our first box, we noticed a difference.
Dinovite is an all-natural daily supplement made from whole foods that help support your pet's immune system, digestion, skin, and coat.
Within 3 weeks, he's not scratching and itching, and he's an all-around happier dog.
Today's Most commercial pet foods are processed at high temperatures, which bakes out all the essential goodness. These processed foods can lack the essential vitamins, enzymes, and probiotics that contribute to overall good health. Adding a scoop of Dynovite to your pet's food bowl is the answer.
If you love your pets as much as I do, you'll want to do what's best for them to live long, healthy, happy lives.
I have 2 cats and 2 dogs. All 4 of them are on the Dynovite.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
DINOVITE.com.
Jackson and Canal Street, waiting on track 9. Every year when summer came around, I drop my bag, walk upstairs, find a window view on my own in Albuquerque bound. Rolling from Chicago out into the plains, farmland and the cornfields drifting by. Flying through Missouri towards the setting sun, couldn't wait to see the Colorado sky. Riding the Chief along the winding rail, riding the Chief on the Santa Fe Trail. 1,300 miles of track in my heart, I still go back. Riding high, riding the Chief.
That's Chris Jones riding the Chief off his latest album, We Needed This Ride. Is that?
All right, it's actually called Make Each Second Last.
Oh, Make Each Second Last. They're all off of this new album.
Yeah.
Make Each Second Last.
Yeah.
So you were just telling me a little bit about how you wrote this, and when you were a teenager riding the Southwest. I rode most of my career when I started for the first decade. I would only book gigs along the Amtrak lines.
Oh man,
it was amazing. Yeah. So I Jackson and Canal. That's I was there all the time.
Yeah, no, I lived in New York, but my dad had moved out to Albuquerque. My parents were divorced, and I would go out there. I used to fly out there. I may have started when I was 9 years old, I think, and I got kind of tired of the flights. I used to get air sickness really badly, and I always loved trains. So I asked my dad, I said, "Is there a train that runs out here?" And he said, "Yeah, there is. If you want to do that, it'll take a little longer." And so I started to do that all the time. And in Chicago, there's a long layover. So as a kid, I would I'd just wander around town for a bit. And I had a friend of the family who once took me to the Museum of Science and Industry. But anyway, I'd board the what Amtrak was called the Southwest Chief, and just a fantastic ride all the way to New Mexico. This was back in the 30s. This started as the Santa Fe Super Chief.
That's great.
And so I just great memories of it. Had always wanted to write a song about it, and then co-wrote it with a great songwriter in Nashville named Tom Utz.
Well, you meet some of the most incredible people. I've been finding, I've been in my basement going through old journals, and I found a picture of myself at the stop in Minot, North Dakota, which is a 19-hour ride from Chicago there. And there's a stopover on that line in Minneapolis. Like as anywhere from, depending, some of those stops could last quite a bit. And I found this picture from 1999 of myself on the platform in Minot. And they had sent it to me. They wrote me, because I would talk to people all the time on the train. It was lovely.
I've met some really interesting people through the years, and the kind of thing that felt could only happen on a trip like that.
Yeah, I agree. And now that I was teasing a little bit about how you live in Canada and clearly a progressive, you were telling me earlier one of the most conservative provinces in Canada is Alberta.
Yes, it is, and it's safe to say that Alberta at the moment has the furthest right provincial government in the country, and which is not unusual. It's had a variety of different kinds of provincial governments, but at the moment, the furthest right it's ever been, and probably the furthest right in Canada.
And I remember when I was there back again in the 90s, there was the racism that I encountered from people had to do a lot with Native residents. I don't. Is it Native Americans and tribal issues? Whether it was there was a lot of basically attacking them. They're like, oh, they seem entitled, or they want everything from the government. Does that continue to be the case?
Yes, I do hear things like that. There is that tension. Of course, at the moment, a huge issue because of some of the grievous wrongs that were perpetuated by these residential schools, and discovering of some bodies of kids that had been
disposed of, essentially.
Yeah, so it's a very big issue right now.
Wow. And I was mentioning that at least there aren't as many guns. I mean, do you get that? I mean, when are Canadians looking at America like, how do you continue to let this happen with violence? And, whether it's Chicago, because we're obviously in the news quite a bit, or when there's a mass shooting.
Yeah, I think people up there have a hard time comprehending.
So do we.
They can't. The parts of the United States that are hard for Canadians to understand, I try to explain as best I can. The healthcare system, they don't understand why it's the way it is and why it continues to be, and they don't understand. And before I tell them what it's like, they don't really know. And then the guns, they don't really understand why that keeps going on, why that's possible.
Well, having lived in the United States and now in Canada, what do you think about the healthcare? Because people will say in Canada, well, you have to wait, or you don't get to choose your specialists and things like that. What's been your experience?
Well, most of that stuff is not true that you hear. That's it. I mean, there's some real falsehoods that were told about it. And what happens is that people take the example of some elective kinds of surgeries, or surgeries that don't have to happen immediately. It does take longer
for elective surgery,
for things like hip replacements and things that don't have to happen right away. Your wait is longer than it would be here, generally. But people take that and say, "Oh, people had to have heart surgery and I had to wait a year." And
right?
Well,
I
died almost a year ago, but it's. What I found coming up there, and I went into it with an open mind. I wasn't really sure how it was going to be the first time I went to a doctor, and I actually went to a specialist. And I talked to this doctor who said, okay, when I was a new resident, I said, well, we like to run some tests about once a year about this, and we'd like to see you here, and let's kind of evaluate what's happening with medication. And all the discussion, no discussion of insurance, who's going to cover what. Everything was based on what my health needs were. And then when the appointment was done, I walked out of the office and didn't talk to anybody, didn't file anything. When I walked in, all I did was tell them who I was, and in you go. What strikes me immediately about the system, there's a lack of bureaucracy. And we go into a doctor's office and we have this whole staff of people that are just dealing with paperwork, and you don't have that there.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I have definitely noticed. I've had really good experiences. I live in a fairly rural area, in the northern area, which has had some difficulty with shortage of doctors and things like that. So that is kind of thing that happens here as well in some rural areas.
Yeah, it's right. The access is the hardest part. I know that you're heading out down to Nashville. Are you having more live performances? The opportunity to do that?
Yes, and we're thrilled about that. And one of the reasons I call the album "Make Each Second Last" is I think we are savoring all of this because it had been a long time, and I was fortunate to have a band or people that had some other sources of income and could ride it out. But very few bands emerged from this without either major personnel changes or just breaking up entirely. And some people were out playing earlier than we were. We were, A, more cautious about it, and B, it's impractical because I have 3 members scattered across the U.S., me up in northwestern Canada. And so we didn't really do anything until the Labor Day weekend. But we've actually been fairly busy and are just loving a chance to get out there and play in front of actual human beings, not on a computer screen. So.
Well, it's I'm thrilled that your travels have brought you through Chicago, so we could hang out again. And somebody asked, I'll tell you this real quick before I play a little bit of his song as we leave. Someone asked how we met, and it was through our friend John Harris, who introduced you to me and me to you a couple of years ago when I worked at another radio station. Had the pleasure of live performance, but we also had a different setup there. It was easier to do, and we hung out and connected that way. And look forward to having you back. And please please don't hesitate to call and say, hey, I'd love to tell people about this tour I'm doing, and I'd love to catch up with you. Everyone can catch up with Chris at chrisjonesgrass.com for show information, and his also find his show Bluegrass Junction on SiriusXM. I didn't write any of that down.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you so much. And here is from Make Each Second Last. Make Each Second Last. Here's We Needed This Ride as We leave. Why is that?
Full of hope, we make our way down this open road. All regrets are left back in the dust. I'm okay to take the wheel while you draw so near. The time to rediscover and to trust. We need this ride, waited for so long. I just want to make each second last.
And the Rick Unger Show is up next, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
No matter the forecast, it's a good day to consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
AP News, I'm Jackie Quinn. President Biden's social policy package is again on the line after Senator Joe Manchin signaled he wasn't ready to support the bill, even though it's been reduced to answer his objections.
West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin says he now wants passage of the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, claiming it's being held hostage by Progressive Party members in the House.
It's time to pass the bill and quit playing games.
He tells reporters he's troubled by what he sees.
Shell games. Budget gimmick.
The White House says it remains confident Manchin will support Biden's plan. Tim McGuire, Washington.
At the U.S. Supreme Court, the justices were questioning a Texas